Honorable President of the Forum, Yanis Urbanovic, Honorable Ministers, Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, Yanis, thank you so much for kind words regarding the Foreign Ministry and the support to this conference. As a start, I would like to say that the venue of this conference is very, very appropriate. I think most of you know that the peace treaty between Russia and Poland has been signed here in 1920. So this is the place where diplomacy has worked in the past. This is the place where leaders, diplomats, public figures have found decisions to very, very complicated issues, issues related to peace, to borders, to the international norms. And I think that this is very much the context where we are gathering today. The second reason is that Latvia, as we speak, is starting celebration of centennial of the modern state of the Republic. And the big celebrations will come next year, but we have started a few weeks ago. And again, I think these historical events 100 years ago should remind us that even after very protracted conflicts and turbulations, leaders should focus on the solutions to the most pressing issues. And of course, May is the most beautiful time in Riga, so I very much hope that everyone will enjoy the beauty of the city and hospitality of Latvia. Speaking about the current context, of course, regrettably, the general landscape since the previous forum in the middle of 2016 has not improved. The theme of this conference is about the growing gap, growing crisis between Russia and the West, the bigger West. And I should conclude that we have not moved much far over the last 12 months. We face more alienation among ourselves. We see more suspicions. We see more confrontational rhetorics. Sanctions are still in place on both sides. And we have very, very limited scope for engagement. I will go through three dimensions: security, EU, Russia, and of course bilateral context between Latvia and Russia. On the security front, the only good thing what I can say is that we have had 4 meetings of NATO-Russia Council over the last year. So there is this platform in Brussels where we can talk openly to each other about the mutual concerns. Of course, ongoing conflict in Ukraine, stabilization of Afghanistan, some confidence-building measures in the Baltic, Black Sea regions. And I think this is good. Latvia certainly is for the utilizing of these NATO-Russia Council to the fullest extent. But broadly speaking, we have not been able to resolve those big issues which have influenced our mutual trust over the last 3 years. You know quite well what are the principles on which EU-NATO policies are based regarding dialogue with Russia. 5 points for dialogue within the EU are well known. Of course, the stress on implementation of the Minsk agreement remain the biggest issue on the list. Of course, continuation to the support of the Eastern Partnership countries remain the policy of the European Union, and the forthcoming summit in November in Brussels will be the next highlight to take the stock of the relationship between Europe and Eastern Partnership countries. Within the EU, we stress strengthening of the resilience of our states strengthening of the energy policy, policy regarding cyber domain. We certainly are in favor of the sectorial engagement with Russia, where we see clearly need for bilateral cooperation, multilateral cooperation. Ambassador Matlock mentioned terrorism. Of course, this is their concern, the biggest concern, what we have in Euro-Atlantic space. That was the subject of the recent NATO meeting in Brussels 2 days ago. And even in our region, we should regrettably conclude that we have seen recently very disturbing acts of international terrorism. Bombings in St. Petersburg, in Stockholm, and of course horrendous attack last Monday in Manchester have reminded us again how much more we should cooperate on those issues. Speaking about St. Petersburg and Stockholm, we have seen that the origin of those terrorist attacks have come from the countries of Central Asia. And those who are familiar with our foreign policy, they know that we have been raising the need for more partnership with Central Asian countries in Brussels for many, many years. That we should not be complacent, we should partner more among ourselves, and we should focus on development issues in that part of the world. Of course, NATO-Russia Council meetings have taken place, but still we have not got full answers on the need for more confidence-building measures. Will be a series of military drills in the coming months. Zapad 2017 drills in the second half of these years are coming, and certainly neighboring states, as Latvia, would be very much interested in more what we call verifiable transparency. We have discussed this subject with Russian ambassador here, with the diplomats of Russian Federation in Brussels, in Moscow, and we think that there is still time for more concrete actions to lower the tension, to build more trust regarding those quite considerable military exercises. On the EU front, as I said, we need engagement, but of course resolution of the frozen and hot conflicts in the border areas of the Russian Federations are quite urgent task. In the meantime, we continue our dialogue with Russia on the areas where this is possible. I am very pleased that the demarcation of the Latvia-Russia border has finished, and in a few weeks we'll be able to exchange the last documents needed, description of the border maps, to conclude this process, which has taken a few years. We are working on the fight against organized crime. Terrorism, I mentioned, definitely should be much more higher priority. Within the region, more should be done, ought to be done, but the pace of the cooperation is considerably hindered. Some of those who have listened to me last time remember I was talking about the need for partnership on environmental issues. The river which unites us, Daugava River, just a few meters from this building, starts in the Russian Federation. It goes through Belarus. It flows into the Baltic Sea. And for many, many years, we are still not able to have this quadrilateral agreement between Russia, Belarus, Latvia, and European Commission on the protection of this river, on the emergency response to the crisis situations on that river. And knowing that there are oil refineries upstream, knowing how much we care about the Baltic Sea, I'm personally frustrated that we cannot move even on those soft subjects in our partnership. Of course, confidence-building measures are required. When it comes to Latvia's approach to dialogue with Russia, of course, we base ourselves on strong defense, collective defense within the European Union and NATO. Of course, we base our policy on the strong, consistent unity with the international law. Respect and the restore of trust to international law, we believe, is a sine qua non for further evolution. And of course, I think these days there are two different competing schools how to go forward. There is a school of thought in Euro-Atlantic space which believes that given that we are moving forward with diverging priorities, diverging interests, maybe this is the time to take a pause. Maybe this is the time to just to confirm, to recognize, acknowledge that we are so different, that interests are so diverging, the approaches are so diverging. So maybe let's just for a few years put kind of pause button on remote controls and wait and see before conditions will be ripe for engagement. We believe that this is not the most wise approach. We believe that recognizing those differences, recognizing that we don't have false expectations, that we don't have destructive ambiguities in our relations, we should identify areas where we could work forward. And of course, in that sense, those second track approaches and conferences like we are having today might produce some positive results. I don't have a crystal ball, I don't have guarantees that we will succeed, but we are paid optimists in the foreign ministry, and we believe that we should try to turn every stone and see whether we can move forward. And as Minister has said, we believe on transport, on organized crime, on environment, on people-to-people contacts and diplomacy. We should work. And of course, we should not spare efforts on resolving those protracted, very emotional conflicts which we are facing in not too far from our borders. Thank you.